Good morning, channel friends.
Hello.
So, we've been looking for a piece of furniture for a while to showcase our new product, which is not that new. We've had it for a few months. But it is always new because it is innovative. It's Terra Magica. And now I've finally found the perfect piece of furniture. These reproductions of console tables were usually placed in the entrance hall in the 70s, 80s, 90s as a place to empty your pockets. And the rest always have the same finish, which is these little squares. There are smaller ones, bigger ones, but this square here was simply glued on with glue and some small nails. I don't really like it, because unfortunately this finish kind of labels this type of furniture and gives it a certain era. It's the classic reproduction of a 70s hallway console. So today, with this piece of furniture, we'll show you how to give it a new lease of life, how to use an amazing product like Terra Magica to create washes, antiquing effects, let's say a new look, because it won't just be vintage, it'll also be modern. Right, let's get started.
Let's start.
When working on this type of furniture, I wear gloves because I don't know what I'll find below. Sometimes these squares are just glued on, other times they also have nails, so to be safe, we put on work gloves. I use my heat gun. If you don't have a heat gun, use a hairdryer, but make sure it's very hot. I use the hairdryer to heat up the surface so I can start peeling it off with a spatula or a small hammer. The more I heat it, the more I melt the glue, and the less I risk damaging the surface. I will also use Terra Magica afterwards. So here I'll be covering it up, filling it in. But it's always best with our furniture to never damage the surface, never dig or break it. Why? Because we might always need to strip it back and restore the wood to how it was originally, before the makeover. So, heat gun or hot hairdryer. And I start heating it up well. Gently, I've set it to a temperature of about 250 degrees. There are definitely some nails, and we can already see them from here. As you can see here, there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. So we already know that we'll need to heat it even more to remove the glue, because there are nails underneath. While Emma heats it up, I slowly begin. Very slowly, I lift it and remove it. Unfortunately, this is the situation we find underneath, you see. 6 small nails and a chipboard. This confirms that it's not a high-quality piece of furniture, so it can be easily painted. Now it will become even more beautiful than before. Unfortunately, when removing it, there's nothing else we can do, because people used a lot of glue back then when we made it, so a lot of glue has taken away the veneer. No worries, it'll become more beautiful. Let's start decorating with Terra Magica. How is it made? We're talking about a very clever powder, because with this method we can have small jars that allow us to cover large surfaces. Because we can make it as needed, we don't have to deal with huge buckets of pre-made modeling paste. So we put our Terra Magica in a bowl. I only had this much left because I've already used it. Obviously, with a jar like this, you can cover a wall even as big as 3 by 4, depending on the structure of the wall or the furniture, but it's quite extensive. Once the powder is placed in a bowl, a bit tall, we add a bit of protective paint and a bit of water, depending on your needs. Why do I say this? Because there are times when you're working vertically and you might need a more rigid paste, and other times when you're working horizontally and you might also prefer it slightly smoother, more liquid, so it can be easily spread. There are all the instructions on the label, so you can make it exactly according to the ideal recipe. Another very important thing is that you must remember you absolutely cannot skip the protective paint. Why? Because the protective paint makes our paste very cohesive and it adheres perfectly to all surfaces. In fact, if you pay attention, it even sticks to shiny surfaces like this one, which are usually quite tricky. Usually, you need to sand and put on some primers. Now, with a bit of water, we'll create our paste. I add a little at a time because, just like I mentioned earlier, I want to control the thickness. Thanks, Emma. You can add it. I immediately stir with a can opener or with a wooden stick, whatever you prefer, and then I stop and continue with a small spatula. Why with a small spatula? Because this helps us with the process, so we can press it down and understand when the paste is perfectly moldable. For me, it's just right now. If I need to make it again, I can create the same consistency or a different one. There's still more. One more thing you can do with our Terra Magica is to add a bit of color to the mixture. This color will make it slightly creamy. Obviously, if you add color, you adjust the water accordingly. Right, could you please pass me the stencil so we can show on this side how we work on the base? First, I try to understand what I want to achieve in this case. I have a stencil that creates, let's say, not just a central decorative element. I want it to continue, so we'll start like this, even here, when it comes to the base. If it is slightly towards the bottom, that's fine, like this too. And then, once finished, you continue here and move forward, staying only within the rectangles. What does that mean? It means that I need to fill this part here first, where I have this hole, otherwise it will be visible. So once I have understood the stencil's outline, I take my paste and I start by creating a textured and filling base. But I don't stop just where I've removed the mouldings. Then I go on to spread the paste over the rest of the furniture, like this. This is because the textured finish needs to be applied all over. Otherwise it would look too fake. Slowly, I work on the entire surface. If you like, you can also put on a pair of plastic gloves and work it with your hands. You can then take a microfiber cloth and clean the edges where you don't want the textured part to go. Emma, show how we work on the base with the glove. This way you're more precise and can massage it and you won't have these excess sticking out. But if you like them, of course, you can leave them. But this is the fastest method, and certainly manual to create a beautiful, nice, homogeneous surface and textured. I continue on the rest. Emma also go around the keyhole. Now we use the textured paste with the stencil. Look here, easy and quick. Emma is helping me holding it very steady. And it will be very natural because I'm creating this design with the help of the stencil on a surface that's already textured. So it will be even more modern. We just remove the excess so there's never any waste. You know we don't want that. And now we lift it up. If you've accidentally smudged, remember that you can easily clean the edge of the furniture with a cloth. Shall we see it? You can't see much now because we're using a tone-on-tone stencil, but soon, when we continue and then go on to decorate, it will look even more beautiful. I continue. And here's the next step. We apply a coat of protective sealant on the surface. This allows us to preserve the design and makes our fresco made with Terra Magica less porous, less absorbent. I can work on it better without risking it crumbling. Don't worry if yellow spots have appeared on the surface because it's completely normal. This is actually part of the tanning process, meaning the powder absorbs what's in the wood underneath and turns it yellow. Anyway, we will paint it. We'll make this fresco different, and that's normal. Let's see how it's done. Protective paint, whatever you prefer, either glossy or satin, slightly diluted. You apply it well over the entire surface. Don't scrape too much, because as you can clearly see, when you spread it, it gets absorbed by the surface. I always definitely recommend sealing your Terra Magica because it will be much easier to apply the color. Even watercoloring and antiquing will be much easier, and also we'll be sure it doesn't crumble. Now I spread it over the piece of furniture, then start coloring.
I start by applying the Lucky Forest over the entire structure, leaving the part we've created with Terra Magica for later, which we'll do in another colour. I use the Elizabeth brush and also help myself with some small brushes from our set. For the narrower parts, we'll apply 2 full coats over entire structure.
Second coat of Lucky Forest, still pure, over the entire shell part. I did what I did before. I apply a pure coat because it helps me to be more structured on the surface with the paint. I always use the Elizabeth brush so as not to have too many marks, because here on the structure part one want it to be quite smooth, and I extend it so that the brush stroke is nice and fluid. I don't want to have too many marks. This brush definitely helps me. I continue over the entire piece of furniture. Now we do the inside part, the decorated one, with dark sand, because we still want to colour it and give it a coat of neutral tone. We use the pointed brush because it goes deep, and this yellowish tone you saw will definitely remain underneath. Remember, in this case, the protective layer also acts as a block, a seal for the base. Look at that lovely tone. Dark sand is a unique shade because at times it shifts towards cool and grey tones. But other times it also reflects the warm tones that are in the house and becomes much warmer. So it reflects the light and the finishes you already have in your home. Choose it because it covers really well and it's truly a trendy colour. We apply it here and also on the sides. Now we do one of the first 3 steps that will bring out our fresco. I take a bit of Lucky Forest, just a little because you need very little. Like a spoonful. And I mix it with a bit of water. After this spoonful of colour, we add water, at least the same amount. Why? Because it's called a wash and the colour is very diluted 20, 30, 40, 50%, even 100%. In this case, I want to create a very, very watered down colour, which allows me to create this lovely gradient that I want to achieve right now. And I'll use, other than the very diluted colour as I'm doing right now, another colour, which is London Fumé, some paper and a damp cloth, well wrung out. I start by applying the colour in a somewhat rather random way, but evenly. As you can see, I go to the side. It doesn't matter if I go over the edge later. It's still the same colour, and the watercolour effect will be quite lovely too, a bit smudged. And I try to go everywhere with this shade that really helps me create a gradient, a background. In a moment, you'll see how I remove it because I won't be doing the usual classic wash, but I'll use another technique, a bit more unique, that leaves some very beautiful effects on Terra Magica. Actually, it's a new product that allows us to achieve new shades. Let's try to understand that when you dilute the color 100%. Actually magic paint, because it's not a texture you can achieve with many brands. Like I'm doing now, right? You see that in some spots I have a lighter green, then when it's diluted, it becomes almost teal. It's a shade that really gives you a lot of satisfaction and changes a lot. You see that now I'm not picking up more color, I'm dragging the one I've already got. Even in these spots where it's missing. However, you need to be careful in this first step, because the color really needs to be spread everywhere. It needs to be dragged everywhere. Look, it really needs to cover every part, like this. It needs to be even everywhere, because the darker color goes deep inside, so it is deep inside that we want to make this effect. Now I try to remove any build-up, like this, so I gather, dab, a bit as if the brush is sucking up the color from the base, always because otherwise it would be wasted, right? Because it would go into the paper, into the sponge, and we never want to waste anything. Once this step of removing the excess is finished, I move on to the next step. I take some paper. That goes gently. To absorb. And that creates a texture. I use the same paper on the other side too, to avoid waste. This is why I've put on gloves. And now I gently dab to bring out certain areas. In some areas, I want more color to remain, and Terra Magica absolutely helps me achieve this truly incredible effect. In other areas, however, I remove a bit more, and if I want to take off even more, I use my wrung-out microfiber cloth to do this delicate work. Just a little, because Terra Magica really needs to create this worked, antique effect. Voila! Don't worry if a little piece comes off, there will always be a backup underneath. But this can happen because sometimes there are small lumps. And it's all normal, look. In fact, the imperfection, if it comes out, is even more beautiful because it's what makes it truly unique. I proceed with the other panels in the same way, and if by chance I've smudged with my cloth, I just need to go over it. To make it precise again. In this lovely bowl, I've put a spoonful of London Fumé and what was left of the diluted Lucky Forest, so I actually made this swamp green by mixing a bit of grey and a bit of green. You can do this step or skip it. You can do it with a colour darker than mine, or lighter. Better not, but it will help you make the base even more, let's say, antique, more vintage, more lived in, more like dirty stone. I really like it. We do it like this. Dripping. And then we also take the hairdryer and we let it go around a bit. If we like the watercolour effect, if not, we stop earlier. One thing I love to do is to make some areas dirtier with more water than others. If I want to make it dirtier with grey, I just need to add a bit more in certain spots. As with the water, I can remove it and it will still look more aged. But remember, it's all a matter of balance. There's no right or wrong. There are also colours that might not suit your home, a piece of furniture like this. You might want to do it with blue or pink, so it's a matter of balance. I'm just going to splash a little bit more on the surface. And what did I mean when I said to watercolour with a hairdryer? I meant this. A technique already seen and overused, but here it won't be. a watercolour, because I change it straight away. It will be like a drip on stone. How do I change it straight away? I stop it before it dries completely. I stop it by going over it again with my paper, nice and flat. And I'll create yet another shade here. I deliberately wanted to be light with the grey, but this was a bit toned down. I didn't want a grey that was too dark, too deep. I really like the fact that it's random. If I want to remove a bit more, I can always do it with the fuller paper. And in these areas, it's truly lovely how the diluted grey peeks through the green. You just need to work in layers once the first one is dry. So, if you want to emphasize it even more, my advice is to take the hairdryer and dry this splash of grey. And then, if it's not enough, or if you've taken off too much, go over it a second time. The step I'm about to do now is something I usually do on other techniques, on colour washes, on mouldings, or to do some dry brushing on flat surfaces. And maybe make them more vintage or perhaps more scratched. Here today, it's really needed, because on a textured surface like this, it's what will bring out the light, highlighting everything I want to show more. To really capture the detail up close, you have to be right here, because here you'll see the little spot, you'll see the tiny dot, you'll see the embellishment coming out. You don't expect it. You don't understand how it's possible for this moulding to be so thick. You think, but that is not a moulding. So what is it? So to really see the details, Franco had to take some nice photos. Joking aside, I use dry brush with dark sand. A play on words to say that I use this dry brush. So I use the technique of dry brush to create colour glazes with dark sand, which is an incredibly beautiful shade of sand. You can really have fun using the brush in all directions. Just make sure you satisfy your urge to highlight the base. Now you won't cover it because you'll really be highlighting the grey parts, the green parts, everything. Look. This effect is beautiful. You just need to do it by choosing the colour to use. I chose dark sand because I didn't want a colour that was too light. And I also chose to keep many things that some of you might have removed. This little stone, some tiny points that come out. In my opinion, these things are what make a restyling unique. A restyling doesn't have to be perfect. A restyling has to be perfect for us, and what we like should stay. Never let anyone tell you if it's right or wrong. Make sure you decide for yourselves what's right and what's wrong. Look at the difference between this part that I've highlighted, especially the base part, and this part which is still flat because I haven't dry brushed yet. And watch how we gradually bring everything out. This is a very nice step. I definitely recommend doing it when you have absolutely good light because you really enjoy it. It's a very elegant step in my opinion, and it's really relaxing. I would carry on all evening. Now I'll carry on with the other sections. Something's missing. A little border that picks up the brown of the furniture is missing. We mustn't make this mistake, that is, being too one-track minded. So with my super sander, which vacuums really well and doesn't create dust, and has a separate battery, I can just put it here, no effort needed. I run the sander over the corners. I've put on a 180 grit, so very, very thin, because I don't want too much wood to come through. Let's get started. Now I really like it. This pickled look, in my opinion, has made the furniture slightly more dynamic, yet still subtle. Jasmine wax with a brush dedicated to wax to protect everything. Make sure not to make mistakes with the jasmine wax like streaks or uneven spreading. Not nice, not uniform. Use the same method you use with the color. So if you apply it like this, with a crossed brush stroke, it's very effective. because you don't miss even a centimetre of the furniture, but you must always remember to eventually spread it out. Spread it following the shapes of the furniture. This way you won't have unsightly marks when the wax dries and you won't struggle to massage it in. So now I'm going to complete the whole piece of furniture using this crossed brush stroke. And now I'll show you how I smooth it out to get a really velvety finish, like this. Even against the light, you'll notice that you can only see the brush strokes of a good brush that has created a very nice restyling, in the sense that the brush stroke, when it's well done and clearly visible, is indeed an added value. A nice, smooth and velvety brushstroke is the added value of a good restyling, because you can see the skill of the person who did it, so you don't need to outline the brushstroke when it's beautiful. Now I take my lovely brush and go everywhere, obviously, even in the spot where I have mouldings. I go, both on the pickled part and on the part where I've done all my work. And of course now all the colours come out in their toned, velvety beauty. Look how beautiful it is, and here too, make sure to follow the advice to use the crossed brush stroke with the wax, so you don't miss even a centimetre of the surface. Now I'll finish the whole piece of furniture and then I'll show it to you set. This restyling is finished too. So, we've placed it in front of a light wall to show you how it looks in a more neutral setting. But in my opinion, it's a piece of furniture that also looks good on brick walls, stone walls, and even on darker walls. And I really love seeing it all together. So, you know, a lucky forest wall with the lucky forest furniture in front. In my opinion, it would stand out even more. I think it's a very delicate restyling. It's not overwhelming, in the sense that it's discreet and blunsing, because you notice the delicacy of the craftsmanship, especially when you get close and see these details. Because Lucky Forest, in these areas where it has thickened, has created even stronger shades, almost teal, sometimes even tending towards blue, compared to other areas where it was thinner and it's not there, so have a good look up close. If you can, thanks to Franco's photos. Anyway, just a reminder that the products used can be found on the website elisirhome.com, the only Italian site that sells magic paint, or from the retailers listed on the site magicpaints.it, divided by region. You cannot find it on Amazon. Never on Amazon, because it's a company decision. Now enjoy the slideshow of photos and see you at the next restyling. Goodbye.